y'all, welcome back to Bulls with the Bard. My name is Cakes, I am your host. Today we're talking with Terrance Fleming. Terrance is from Mobile, Alabama, and he got his BFA in acting from the University of Southern Mississippi to the top. Since graduating, his journey continues in Baltimore, Maryland. The city has been very giving to him, his partner Emily Clayson, who is also an actor, and his two cats, Titus and Fox. He has been honored to be able to perform in theaters in the DMV, and he is currently in Much Ado About Nothing at the Shakespeare Theatre Company, which runs until December 18th. Along with that, he has been able to meet many cool and interesting people who aren't exclusive to the performing industry. Since moving to Baltimore, Terrance has also joined VOLO, formerly known as Baltimore Social, a social sports league with many options of recreational activity. His go-to is flag football. While playing, Terrance has been able to build relationships with people from many different professional backgrounds. Now, when it comes to candy, Terrance likes almost anything chewy, and if he drinks a soda, it is normally of the Mountain Dew variety. Rising from the ashes that was the pandemic, Terrance has finally been able to get the wheels rolling on some writing projects. He's very happy with the progress and potential he has found in his writing. Terrance does what he loves and loves what he does, and we love Terrance for that. Terrance is here with us today to talk about his experience with VOLO and to talk a little bit about how the Shakespeare industry can do better by the Black community. I am ecstatic to share our conversation with you, but first, as always, we got a little high. All right, y'all, we are back talking about The Plague with Terrance Fleming. Terrance, how did you spend your quarantines?
I would say probably very similar to a lot of other people. You jump into it and you're trying to find that fine line of oh, I have the time that I've always wanted to do these things and these and things and these things and feeling that pressure to like get them done and not feeling like, oh, I wasted that time and so I'm a waste, nothing like that. But walking the fine line of not going too far into that realm while also giving yourself the grace of knowing like, hey, this is an impactful time. This could also be a time of rest that everyone needed, that everyone didn't necessarily know that we needed. And so walking that fine line of starting the process of writing the screenplays or plays or short films that I wanted to write. But then on the days where, I think to myself, oh, I can't waste these hours. Let me try to get this writing in while I got it, taking a step back and pausing and understanding, be like, hey, like let's be kind to yourself. Let's continue to show grace to yourself because this is also a stressful time, and you're using this writing and stuff and trying to stay busy and do all those things to try to keep your attention away from the fact that the theaters are shut down, the fact that people are losing jobs, the fact that you have people close to you and close to other people that that are dying from this thing. And so I would say just like everyone, like trying to feel as good about yourself and what you're doing with your time as I possibly could. And I think that, I personally can look at how I spent that time. And I think that I didn't necessarily finish screenplays that I wanted to finish, but I found momentum in them, and I started some of them. I learned how to write an outline, and just learn these different things. I found different YouTube pages so that I could still find that time to relax while also taking in the information. Because as we know, info is everywhere. We just got to find it. Um, and so yeah, I would say like that's in a full circle of words just then. I would say like that's kind of how I was able to spend that time and try my best not to let it hit my psyche as hard as it possibly could have, and the way that it possibly did hit other people. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I feel like we haven't had many guests talk about the idea of rest during that time. And holy cow, did I not realize how much I needed it until a month in when I was like, I feel better, even though I
Yeah.
haven't seen people.
Yeah.
That's strange. Okay. So yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up. I know when the world opened up a little bit, you engaged in some sports. I follow you
Yeah.
on Instagram. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I love watching you.
Well, prior to acting, like sports was my main avenue. And so but as you know, as a lot of us have found, the art stole my heart. And but being physically active um plays a huge part on my like mental and emotional state, just because it was always such a huge part in my life. And this field doesn't always allow me to go to the certain spot that sports allowed me to, as far as pushing my body to a certain extent, and walking that fine line of not hurting yourself while also defying defying what you feel like your limit is. And those moments are just so exhilarating to me. And we get to do it, every day in different ways, but being able to be put in positions to do it physically and to exert that type of energy doesn't present itself as often as it did when I was playing sports constantly and in school. And so when I moved to Baltimore, I was like, okay, I want to try to find that. And so I just was online, and I was on Facebook, and I just saw something that said Baltimore Social, which is now called Volo. But at the time it was called Baltimore Social, and it was just, a social league, and there were different sports that could be played. So, you could play flip cup, you could play kickball, you could play cup in hand, you could play cornhole, you could play basketball, and you could play volleyball, and you could also play flag football. And because football was my like main sport aside from track and field, that caught my attention. And so I started playing it, and because I was acting when I started playing, I wasn't out there as often. But when the pandemic hit and they allowed, us to play still, because it was outside and you had to get checked, and they would check your temperature before you went in, and and we were outside and playing of that sort. And it was also kind of an honor code of being like, hey, people, if you're feeling sick, if you're like, yes, we're checking temperatures, but you never know. And so, you kind of just had an honor code. And before they even allowed us to start playing again, me and some friends would just meet up in a big field and play, because it doesn't take much to play flag football. We all have our own cleats, we all have our own belt, we all have gloves and a ball. So you can just find a big open space and you can go to town. And so once we got into the groove of that, and because theaters were shut down, I was able to be out there way more often, and I was able to be playing every week and play on multiple teams in that way. And because of that, people who only saw me maybe like once or twice every couple of months, because I was playing as many games as I could. But then when the show started, not wanting to put my body in harm's way because of the show, I would have to stop playing. And so I was very, very inconsistent when I initially started playing. But you take the silver linings, as Stuart Little taught us. You take the silver linings that the pandemic brought, and one of them was the time to do the other things that you love to do, which, as I'm sure as you saw friends and I saw friends and family members, like find other interests or find time to do the things or the hobbies that they wanted to do. And so I was able to do that with flag football. And because I was out there a lot more, people were able to see like the talent that I had, and the joy I play with. And I think my early experience in sports and my theater life about teaching me how to collaborate. And sports is big about collaboration. It's about, I'll do my job, you do your job. We won't try to do each other's job. and we'll trust that everybody is going to do their job. And just the beauty when that works, as you've seen on stage, as you've seen, as some people have seen on the basketball court, football field, doesn't matter, a film set, whatever. Like it when that moment happens where everyone is locked into what they're doing and completely trusting everyone else to do their job, it is a beautiful thing. And so because I was able to be out there more and more, they could see that that's the kind of person I was. And because it's a social league, and I was never the person to go out to somewhere to make friends. I was always like, hey, if I make friends, that's great, but I'm out here to play the sport. I'm out here to run around to do that. But I was very thankful for the fact that I did end up making friends and I did end up meeting people. And because it's a social league, people are doing everything else outside of playing flag football. So it was neat to be hanging out with people and find that I was playing flag football with some police officers, that I was out there playing flag football with volunteer firefighters. The fact that I was out there playing flag football with registered nurses and doctors and mechanics and salesmen and just all these different like finance workers, bankers. It's and them finding out that I'm an actor and we kind of you're able to see how people are ticking and how they're operating on the field and you see what they do coming through because as people say the athletic field is a microcosm of society. It's really neat. And like, and some people have cameras and so they get stuff on tape. And so you're able to see your accolades, which is always great because, it's always fun to do it, but it's even better when you have some proof of your badassness. And so, and so, yeah. I would say like, yeah, it's been a really good time playing flag football. And outside of that, I've been invited to play kickball and play other sports. So it's been neat to start to also expand outside of that as well.
Wow, that's so cool. What a great way to like re-engage with community
Mhm.
after a time that you're like completely shut out and away from it.
Mhm.
My God. I feel like that must also benefit how you work on stage. Like
Oh,
working with people in a team in that capacity, like can only be good for you.
well, and it shows you like because there are some things we say in theaters like when they tell you to not to be married to a decision and things of that sort, but it's like, but also some people like, be married to a decision, but don't be afraid to drop it off when you need to. And the parallel, in my opinion, that sports and performing have are like ridiculously close to me. And someone else may look at it disagree, but I personally think that just the unless you're playing a solo sport, but then at some point, you have solo artists. And so you have these things. It lines up. There's a commitment, there's a mentality. And especially when you go into the realm of team sports and you go into the realm of doing a show where it's just not about you, it's about the cast. Like it's the fact that especially, now you have some exceptions with teams who stay together for years. But in a lot of sports, there's a quick turnaround. There's a quick turnaround, and because the shows that we do, whether it's in DC or Baltimore or wherever anyone is living, or in Colorado, these aren't touring shows, and so these shows have a beginning and then they have an end, and there's this window of you coming into a room with new people and investing into these people and them investing into you and committing some to some extent this delusion of closeness as far as like where you are because you're all in this experiencing it together and that we all have to take steps forward together to get the product that we want and there's no person left behind. And so sports especially because in a social sport and a lot of people tend to play with the same teams from time to time, but even when you play with the same teams, sometimes a person can't play this time, and so you don't have as many people, and so now you gotta find someone else that you hopefully know that you can put on your team, but you don't. And so the deadline comes, and now you have a free agent who you have no idea who they are. And now you're playing with this person, and you have 6 weeks of ball to play a game each week. And then you start the playoffs, and sometimes the playoffs are a week, and sometimes they're 2 weeks. But you really have this 8 week window of start like meeting with your team, and then the team being done, and now a new season starts.
Mm.
And so you have this quick turnaround of having to come into a space with a new person, you having to figure out what that person's strengths are, what that person's perceived weaknesses are, and they do the same for you. And now you're doing this dance with everybody as far as coming to the same level, figuring it out, figuring out where everyone fits. And that's also the beauty that I think about when it comes to like football and also theater, because you have some people who will poo on other athletes because the athlete can't do it all. And the beauty about football is that no one should be asked to do it all. You can't run or catch, but you can throw. Okay, you're the quarterback. Hey, you can't really throw, but you have really good hands. You're a wide receiver. The whole point is that you're putting everyone in a spot to where they can put forward their strengths to the overall goal of the group. And I think that that's the same thing that happens on stage, and that's the same thing that happens in theater or film. And so I would definitely say, like, even though I was in theater before I started playing in this social league, playing in the social league is, and also because it's a co-ed league, and I'm already a feminist and work every day to annihilate any toxic masculinity that I have, because I know it's there no matter how forward I'm working towards. Innate things are just there. This co-ed league has pushed me even further in that realm, because I'm like, yo, I see female identifying people out here giving these men the work. And it's like, hey, look, it's just more and more reinforcing that for me. So like all of these things that I am learning and experiencing in this social league of flag football, even though I've already experienced them in the theater and the stage, it's just reinforcing it. It's just constantly reinforcing it. And it's great. It's just great to like sit and watch and observe that.
That's so cool. I don't play a lot of sports because I am a klutz. Um, but I adore watching soccer and have like a team that I've followed for like 15 years. And so much of what you just said reads to me, like the high turnaround rate, all of that. Like some of what you just said, I was like, oh yeah, sometimes you're used to doing a show with people for 4 weeks and then the swing's in. Oh, like you got to be able to adapt. Crazy. So yeah, all of that resonates with me just as somebody who enjoys watching sports. I think that's so cool. I'm glad you're having that
What's your team?
experience. Real Salt Lake, they're a soccer team based in like Sandy, Utah. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think I saw you post about it. I think I saw you thank all of your friends who rode that journey with you. Yeah.
yeah. This whole last season, I decided to bring on all of my DC friends to watch games with me, and that has also been a delight. Gotta love the community that comes from sports. It's delightful. And speaking of community, this season is kind of all about community and how the Shakespeare community can do better by the various communities that we find inside of it. So, with you, I am curious, how can the Shakespeare industry do better by the Black community?
I will start off by saying I do not have all the answers. And my answers probably aren't as informed as anyone else's, but like, just from my personal opinion as a person coming from that Black community who has found a strong footing in the Shakespeare world. Well, for one thing, I think that certain theaters are taking these steps to do that. Like the Shakespeare Theater Company, as far as with their student matinees, Chesapeake Shakespeare Company, as far as with their student matinees, and me being a company member there and having taught in some of Chesapeake teaching residencies at different schools throughout Baltimore and throughout the outskirts of Baltimore. I have been able to witness firsthand their attempt to go into these schools of people of color, primarily Black schools that I was able to see, and whether it's for a week or whether it's for 2 weeks, to try to bring the text to the students and make the text very approachable, because I find that, for one, anyone, no matter who they are, no matter what color they are, I think that approaching Shakespeare that early is just going to be difficult, just
Yeah.
because it's difficult for people who are older to approach Shakespeare because of the patterns that the words are put in, and because of the glory that is also put on it from certain people in the world, as far as how highbrow they try to make it seem, and how upper class that they try to make it seem, and how it's not for everyone in a type of way. And I think that I've seen steps to do that. But I think one of the steps, and I think a good example can be seen at Roundhouse, and I haven't seen it, but just from what I've seen as far as the promotions and a couple of people who I know in the cast, their production of um The Tempest is it just looks like a fun time. You know what I mean? And Much Ado About Nothing at the Shakespeare Theater Company right now, like putting it in a news station, and because it's public domain, playing with the words and playing with the things and moving them around a little bit, and writing a few other things in there to get the point of view that our wonderful director Simon has put on the table, that we have followed headstrong. I think understanding that more work is going to have to be put into adapting these pieces to make them approachable, because the older and older these pieces get, the further and further away people are getting from them. And so, yeah, you have your certain crowds that I'm sure you can go very period if you want to. You can make it very high class if you want to. That's not to negate that. But it's to say that if the children are the future, the children are the ones who you want growing into have an appreciation for this. Not necessarily that it's their favorite thing, but to have them having an appreciation for what it is, and to have an appreciation for the arts, so that even if they personally aren't necessarily into it, they believe that, hey, you know what, it should be funded. Hey, they do need to have the money for this because it's important. And the only way to try to help the future of that is to invest into them now, and the way you invest into them now is making it as approachable as you can. Because I mean, to be honest, like me growing up in my neighborhood, I like going to a play, like not even a Shakespeare play, but like a play in general. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that's not. I'm instantly thinking, the first, if you would have said that to me and said, hey, you want to go to a play, I probably would have said to you, I'm not rich.
Hmm.
And so just knowing that's how unapproachable it always came off to me, I have to believe I wasn't the only one who viewed it as that unapproachable. And the only time you even touch theater was when, as an actor, people tell you, oh, I acted when I was in middle school, or I acted. And it was like in this class that you did a piece in, and it was a drama class, and you really didn't get to put on any plays because it wasn't funded. And so you're really just doing it all in the classroom. And there's really no realm for you to even think about that as a future, because it doesn't even seem in the realm of possibility. And so I think that it has to be extremely approachable. And and just like these theaters I kind of talked about, you have to make the conscious decision to go into these schools. And you have to go into the communities. They aren't going to come to you because once again, it seems unapproachable. And so if they're not going to come to you, you have to go to them. And if you're going to go into that Black community, you have to also have enough awareness to understand who you're sending into that Black community. Now, I'm not telling you to go find a Black representative to send in there and be like, hey, we're white, you're Black, go represent us. I'm not telling you to do that, because at that point you're just placating, and we don't need that.
Hmm.
Um, but
Hmm.
but it's an understanding of, if the person that you're sending over there to relate to these children is the person that looks like them. I'm hoping that that person is on your board. I'm hoping that that person is somewhere in your system to be having a long-term effect. They're not just in there to go be your ambassador. That's not what we want, nor what we're asking for. We're asking for a person who's in the room who's there to stay so that you can have a constant awareness of these different communities if that's what you're trying to do. And I use it as an example, and I won't say the theater's name just because I do like the theater, but there was a casting call for um Othello at this particular theater. And I saw the casting call for it and I was interested in it, but the Othello was already pre-cast. Now, mind you, looking at it now and me thinking about it now, I'm like, Terrance, I could have totally went in there and auditioned for Iago. I could have totally went in there and auditioned for any other role. I could have went and auditioned for any other role. And if I had saw that casting call at maybe like a day earlier or like a day later, I probably would have been in that mentality. But just the fact that I saw it when I saw it, I instantly thought to myself, okay, well, the black role's taken. And it's a theater that I knew was making attempt to trying to make their casting and their theater more diverse, which I don't doubt the genuineness of that desire. But I would also think to myself, okay, cool. Have an awareness about the fact that when people think of Othello, what's the first thing you think of? You think of, oh, black man. It is what it is. Even though there are other renditions of it, it is what it is. And also because of the racial component that's been played between Othello and Iago so often, that's kind of like almost the first thing that comes to mind. So I have to believe that when other people of color saw that Othello was already pre-cast, and I've had the privilege of playing many other roles that were nowhere near like a black role. But even with that experience, I still instantly thought, like, just the first thing in my mind was, oh, well, the black role's taken. And so I have to believe that other people who probably haven't been as fortunate as me to play other roles that weren't just like black roles, like of that sort, I have to believe that they also clocked out. And so in that way, I'm like, yo, even if you want it, even if you precast your Othello, don't tell us.
Yep,
Be-
yep.
because the whole point is that you're trying to get us in the room. You're trying to get us in there. So even if you precast it, because so many places do, so many theaters precast, you can say what you want. Every role isn't created equal. And so even if that's the case, like you just like cut off your nose to spite your face in that moment because you want more diversity, but now you've cast the role that it is what it is. People, a black male is gonna go, oh, well, okay, that's done. That's gone.
No, and I'll chime in and say I don't know if it's the same theater that you're thinking of, but I can think of an exact like copy and paste experience where Othello was precast, and I did have multiple black male friends be like, I'm not going in for that. Why would I?
Why would I?
Yeah.
Right. And mind you, and like I said, like, and this is nothing to say about, those people, or even myself. But like I said, if I had saw that a day later or a day earlier, who knows? I probably would have been in the mentality of being like, whatever, the Othello's taken, that's fine. I'm going there and I'm gonna go audition for Iago or whatever. To me, I just think it was a good attempt, but just slightly off in the awareness as far as thinking about what you might be cutting off by making this decision. And not only making this decision, telling us.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, even if you want to go as far as telling people that that's what you're doing, I feel like you could at least then extend like the olive branch of we are looking at Black people for other roles in this show.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that is not something that is always clear about when people put up Othello.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not understood. And you shouldn't assume that is understood. You know what I mean? Like you shouldn't assume that. And I'm sure that they probably did. That's what I mean. I don't think they cast that role and was like, yep, our black quotas filled. I don't think that at all. I think that if a bunch of people of color walked in there and blew their minds, and they were the best actors. I'm sure there's the same chance or probability that like the whole cast probably could have been black. Like that probably could have been on the table. But it's just the fact that like you shouldn't assume that that's understood, especially when you know that diversity is lacking because you're consciously putting in the attempt. And so like there is it was just a slight miss.
Mm-hmm.
It was a slight
Mm-hmm.
miss. And I think that like that's a moment of awareness that some people probably that they don't have because they haven't had to have.
Yes.
And that's not me saying it to excuse it. That's me saying that that's just is what it is.
Yes.
And yeah, yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that like that's just a moment of a little bit of like a lack of awareness. But I think that yeah, and like what you just said, like when you put a casting call up, like put it on there, like make it known. And I understand, you're gonna have some people who probably may be rubbed a little uncomfortable with how far you're going about it or whatever, but the pendulum has to swing. The pendulum has to swing to an extreme of the other direction before it gets back to the middle. It is what it is. And I think that like, and when there's an extreme, there's going to be some people who catch a couple L's. Like I have a friend of mine who said he was walking down the street, he saw a casting call, and he said that it was like looking for white man to play like side character role or whatever. And he looked at it and he said, you know what, Terrence? I was like, it sucks that I necessarily have to be alive during this time that this movement is happening, but I understand it. He was like, I understand it. And so there was a moment of like, hey, look, hey, I'm sure there are many black people who were young, like back in the day, who was like, yo, I wish I could be living right now. Well, everybody ain't fortunate to fall in the time period of life that we want to fall in. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. There was definitely a period in my life when I was less educated where I was like, all these roles are getting taken from me. And now as I'm more educated, I'm like, oh no, maybe we were taking those roles from them.
Yeah,
Like, maybe we should think about the balance there
yeah, yeah.
and think about what we see as normal and
Right,
then balance those scales. Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Ah, and what you just said, like that's another way of trying to get into those communities. Like you have to try to normalize it to them. You have to try to normalize it. And the only way to normalize it is to take some bigger swings than what you think you necessarily need to take. And it's not just putting on a black play, in your season. It's putting in a play and having it cast absurdly. Like there is and trusting that people are going to come in and have that suspension of disbelief and accept what you're giving them. And the more you accept that, hey, yeah, this is normal. This is normal. This father is Japanese, this mother is European, and this child is black. It's fine. It's fine.
yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I saw a production of Much Ado About Nothing out here in Denver like a couple weeks ago. And it was my first experience seeing Shakespeare outside of somewhere like DC in a long time. And I think for most of the people in the audience, they probably didn't think about this at all. But for me, coming from DC and watching the show, the first thing I thought was like, okay, we have a cast of like 13 actors here. We have one black man playing Claudio, an Asian woman playing Hero, and an Asian woman playing Margaret, conveniently so you can say that we mistook Hero for that woman. And I was like, we we tried like a little too hard to be like, well, we've got to make sure that we've got two Asian women if we're going to do the mirror thing. But we didn't really think like that's convenient for that world that the only BIPOC people are the people that get mistaken for each other. Like, maybe we should have thought about that a little bit more. But I don't think they do. And like you said, I think it comes from a place of like, we don't have anybody to tell us that that's what the optic is. We don't have anybody to educate us on these things, and we
Yeah.
don't have these conversations nearly as much as people in DC have them. I don't think it comes from a place of, generally, I mean, there are definitely places where
Uh-oh.
it comes from a place of wanting to leave people out or whatever, but
Right,
I think for
right,
the most part, like, yeah, it's a, I mean well, but I'm not talking to the right people. I don't
right,
have the right people employed around me to
right.
have those conversations with. Yeah, it's
Well, and like, and I will say this in a way of saying like what progress has been seen. I went and saw a show probably like half a year ago. So yeah, so we're like 7 months ago. I could be off, time's an illusion. And when I went and saw this show, I went and saw it with a friend of mine. And when we went and saw it, she told me, she was like, okay, Terrance, just so you're aware, this is a very white show. And I was like, cool. I was like, whatever, let's go. I'm here to see some theater. And even though I had been warned, it still surprised me every single time a new character came on and was introduced and they were white. It still surprised me each time. And to me, that gave me a good feeling. That gave me a good feeling that I was so surprised to see a cast that was all white. And so just having that experience, I was like, okay, all right. There's clearly, even if it's unconscious, there's clearly been a step across the board in theater, wherever I've gone, to make adjustments as far as getting people of color on these stages. And even though I was aware of that, it took that experience of being just taken aback to every single time a person came on stage, they were white. And I was like, what, wait, that person's white as well? But like I said, it was a good feeling that I got about having that feeling. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I definitely can't think of an experience that I've had in the theater, I think, in the last like 5 years where that has been the case. So, like, yeah, I agree. It's we're taking baby steps, but the hope is that like maybe we take some teenager steps soon,
Well, we
like,
gotta grow. We gotta grow. We gotta grow. We gotta grow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess with that in mind, do you have any like characters or shows that you would like to see produced with the Black community in mind?
Ooh, yeah. Like
Mhm.
I would say, and I say this specifically, not necessarily that I think that the story would change, including people of color, but it is just one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. And I would just love to see Comedy of Errors
Ooh,
in an all black cast. You know what I mean? Like
yes.
it's it is because of the absurdity of like it and it could be that it was one of my like I think it was like the first professional Shakespeare show I ever saw, and it was
Mm.
at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival,
Oh,
and
cool.
it was around 2007 or 8 maybe somewhere in there, and a good friend of mine and inspiration to me Esau Pritchett, he was in that production of Comedy of Errors. And I had never seen anything like it. I hadn't experienced a Shakespeare play on stage yet. I hadn't ex and so for that to be the first one that I experienced, just these two sets of twins, like both basically walking the same lives. And it all starts because this captain sits down and somebody's telling him a story or he's telling the story. Yeah, and it just holds such a special place in my heart. And so I would love to see Comedy of Errors and an all black cast. And mind you, I have been able to have the experiences because of being close to Art Centric Theater in Baltimore, which is a not just a all black theater company, but a people of color diverse theater company. I've been able to see an all black cast of Aida slash be a part of that. I was also able to be in slash see an all black production of Little Shop of Horrors, and there are definitely experiences when you eh, see these shows in black hands, and because of our knowledge and experience of black people in the history of this country, it can't help but fuel, and it can't help but enhance and color and color and different ways. And I doubt that that would not be the case with Comedy of Errors, obviously. But yeah, I would just love to see it. Yeah.
I love that idea. I got to see Midsummer at the Folger when they just did it, and that was not an all black cast, but it was a largely black cast, and very clear that like the actors were told like do what you feel comfortable doing, ad lib, like bring humor that your community is going to understand. And it was outrageously funny. Like there was just like a beautiful irreverence for the text. Like
Yeah.
they were reverent with it when they were speaking it, but then there was just ad-libbing in a way that like felt so familiar even as a white person living in DC. And so I can imagine if you're a black person sitting in that theater, it's probably the first time you've ever related to Shakespeare in that way. And like I think kind of like you said at the beginning, a very nice way to like bridge the gap with the community and make it feel more accessible.
That is
So
also
yeah.
ours as well. It's not just theirs. It's ours as well.
Yes.
It's like, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, it was beautiful and hilarious and like one of my favorite Shakespeare experiences in DC in general. Midsummer is like middle of the line funny for
Right.
Shakespeare. I feel like Comedy of Errors I have never left without like busting a gut laughing. I love that play so much. I would so love to see it in the hands of the Black community. Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and especially because and the thing that I look forward to in that moment is that like you get to see the power of like black women
Yes,
in that show. You know what I mean? And you get to
definitely.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, wow. What a great suggestion. Thank you for bringing that to the table. I
yeah.
hope
Oh
it
yeah.
inspires people to do it. Um, awesome. Well, before we wrap up, Terrance, do you have anything else that you would like to add?
No, I don't think so. You were lovely in allowing me to ramble as I am one to do. Yeah, I appreciate it. This was great. Thank you for, giving platforms and things of that sort. So like that's always very appreciative. Yeah, yeah,
I'm happy to. I'm happy to. Thank you so much for being on the show. I know we have been trying to do this for a long time, like
yeah,
since
yeah, yeah,
before this season even existed.
yeah.
So I am so very happy I got to have you on and very much enjoyed your ramblings. Thank you for bringing them to the table. Um, yeah. So I think that's where we can wrap up for the day. We'll
Cool.
see y'all next week. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can follow Terrance and Bulls with the Bard at the handles either on your screen or in the description. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and we will be back for another episode of A Plague next week. Until then, bye y'all.
1,000 sighs to save. Oh, lay me where sad true lover never find my grave to weep there.